I'd always been a plotter, and I was like, I'm going to try pantsing a novel. Like, I'm going to do this because I've heard it's so good. And like, I was feeling stuck at the time. And it's not my process. It did not work. I ended up with, I don't know how the people that do pants do it. They are wizards. Because I ended up with like 50,000 words of just like nonsense that went nowhere.
What is up, everybody? You're listening to episode 35 of SFF Addicts. I'm your host, Adrian M. Gibson, and welcome to your weekly dive into the world of science fiction and fantasy. We're so excited to finally launch our official SFF Addicts Patreon and merch store. Check the links in the description to support what we do here, get access to Patreon-exclusive bonus episodes, author readings, and more, and purchase t-shirts, mugs, notebooks, and all kinds of cool swag. Also, don't forget to rate and review the podcast on your favorite podcast app, and subscribe to the FanFiAddict YouTube channel, where this and every other episode of the show is available in full video. And now, welcoming today's guest author, but not only a guest, my new SFF Addicts co-host, MJ Kuhn. How are you, MJ?
Woohoo! I am doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So this is part one of our two-part chat with MJ, a little bit of an introduction to her as an author and a person now that she's going to be full-time on SFF Addicts, and to give listeners and viewers a better sense of who you are. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah. Hi. I'm MJ Kuhn.
Hey.
That's it. That's the whole spiel. No.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm a fantasy author. And I don't know. I write Among Thieves is my debut novel. It's a fantasy heist story. But yeah, as a reader, I'm really into all things fantasy, sci-fi. From the door stoppers to the tiny little novellas. So I'm excited to talk about it all.
Except short stories, they can just fuck it. No, I'm kidding.
That's true. I do like short stories as well. I just forget about them. I don't read them as often.
Me too.
I know.
Yeah.
We gotta seek those out more, maybe.
We gotta fix that up a little. It's like I have some short story collections on my shelf, but for the most part, I'm like, yeah, shit. I don't know. I just get into a novel and I just forget about everything else.
Right?
So,
well, and that's what
yeah.
like I love about like a long series too, is it's like then you just don't have to think about what you're reading next for like a really long time because you're just like bought in. But I feel that.
Well, you also have your sequel to Among Thieves coming out in July, which is called Thick as Thieves. Tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, so it's a sequel. It is also a fantasy heist. Yeah, it's all the characters are I don't want to spoil the first book, but they're back up to their old shenanigans. So more betrayals, more action, and more magical good times. So it's gonna be fun.
Woo. Yeah,
Woo.
and we'll get a chance to talk about that later in the year as well. And MJ's got a few special treats for the Patreon supporters out there. But you know, just to get to know you a little bit better, what got you into fantasy and sci-fi in the first place, and how did that develop into wanting to write your own stuff?
Yeah, so I always say that like Redwall was my gateway drug to fantasy. Yeah.
I knew I liked you for a reason.
Right?
Oh my God.
You're like, perfect. I'm feeling much more secure about this partnership now. Yeah.
Brian Jacques was my boy growing up.
Yes, same. I was so obsessed with the Redwall books, honestly, to the point that my friends in like the 4th grade and I created like our own like little cult, like a little religion based on the lore of Redwall. And yeah, it was like a whole thing. So yeah, I was pretty obsessed with Redwall, and it transitioned into writing like pretty directly. Like I've always wanted to write my own stories, and like my first stories that I ever wrote, or my first book, quote unquote, on notebook paper at age like 9, was basically just like Redwall fanfic. Where it was like all the characters are mice and owls and rats and stuff.
Don't forget the badgers.
Fun. Oh, and the badgers. Oh, and the hares. Who could forget the long patrol? I don't know if you've read any of those books again, like as an adult, but they hold up. Like
I have not, but it's one of those series where it's like, now that I have my son, he's 2, and
Oh my gosh,
I'm just
yes.
like thinking sort of like, okay, in like 3 years I can introduce him to this. It's like in 5 or 6 years I can introduce him to kind of this stuff. Redwall is just one of those ones where I'm like, dude, I gotta do it. But then I'm just
Yes.
like, there's so many books, so it's like
There
maybe
are, but
start
they're
maybe
like all standalones almost. Like, I
pretty
feel
much.
like you can, like, obviously, like, what is it? Like, Martin the Warrior is like the earliest in the timeline, maybe.
Yeah,
Uh, I have no idea even what's the latest in the timeline, but I feel like you can pick up as long as like maybe you read Redwall first, so you have the basis of what the heck is happening.
yeah,
And then I feel like you can pick up any book in the series and just kind of like read them out of order, and stuff that's out of order is like maybe an
that's true.
Easter egg later, like, oh my gosh, I read that character's story already. I don't know. I feel like it's fun.
Like my 5-year-old son picking up on Easter eggs, be like, damn, dude.
I mean, he's got you as a dad. I feel like
Mhm.
he's going to have some sort of intense literary knowledge.
I think so too. Just a
High
quick
expectations for this kiddo.
quick aside. This is a bit of a test. What's your favorite Redwall book?
Oh, oh my gosh, there's too many choices. I I do like the Long Patrol. I like Salamandastron. Am I saying that
Yes.
right? That's how I always said it. I never heard it said out loud.
Salamandastron? I don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Maybe I'm saying it too weird. Um, yeah, I think those are maybe two of my favorites. What's
Oh,
yours? Did I answer wrong?
Salamandastron is my favorite.
Okay, yeah.
I just love volcano badgers. It's like, how could you not?
What's not to love?
Yeah. It's
Volcano
like,
badgers. If
you
that's
know,
all I knew about it, I would be in.
yeah. Thinking about like ecology, it's like they don't normally hang out in volcanoes, but I like it, you
But
know?
who cares? Yeah, right?
Yeah.
We're
Because
suspending reality here, Adrian. This is fantasy. Come
yeah.
on, man.
Anthropomorphism, man.
Also, I was gonna say I like that the animals are like talking and wielding swords and axes and stuff,
Yeah.
and you're like, but the badgers don't live in the volcano.
That's just me
Like,
being
no,
like
yeah,
such a
mice
nerd.
don't live in tiny churches either. I hate to.
That's whatever, man. Now we're just getting into semantics.
Right?
So besides Redwall and all of Brian Jacques' magical creations, what were some of your other biggest inspirations when it came to writing, be it books or movies or TV or video games or what, or even stuff from like lived experience?
Yeah, I think so for books. I've been a big fan of Tolkien as far as like lore and world building goes forever. Like the Lord of the Rings films. I watched the films before I read the books, but I watched the films when I was like, 7. So in my defense, I don't think I was ready to be picking up, Return of the King at age 7.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved all of that growing up. If we're talking about like specifically influences for writing Among Thieves, I've said it a bunch of times and I'll say it forever. The Lies of Locke Lamora was a direct influence, to the point that like the world of Among Thieves is called Tamor, which is a not so subtle nod to the city of Kamor. Because it was just my way of being like, I want to, show my appreciation for
Just
the
like
work that got it
plucking a
started.
little,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like, well, and I've seen a couple times. I think I've had 2 readers ever like send me a message and ask if that was on purpose. And every time I'm
Mhm.
like, yes, now we can be friends because you get it.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of having like not just books inspire. So like video games are huge inspiration for me in everything. I love video games. And I get a lot of questions from people who've read Among Thieves if it was inspired by Assassin's Creed,
Mm.
which not on purpose it wasn't.
Mhm.
But I'm sure it was, you know what I mean? For some on some level, indirectly, I'm sure that I had some influence because I've played not all the games at this point because I'm old and I don't have as much video game time as I'd like anymore. But for
And they
a
all and
while,
they moved on to like bulky ass like 80+ hour RPGs
yes.
anyways.
And I am
Yeah.
like such a completionist in video games that like I have to I have to do all of it, get as close to
Mhm.
100% as I can. I can't just like go and do the surface level plot. So yeah, it would take me forever, or it does take me forever when I play a new game.
Yeah.
um but yeah, so for Among Thieves that's probably about it, but like I also am obsessed with Mass Effect, and it
Yes.
is nursing my desire. Someday I'm gonna write a space opera, I swear to God. And it's going to
Jenny
be
Dewis
because
is going to be so happy when that
of Mass
happens.
Effect. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and oh my gosh. Well, and the last watch, right? The Divide books,
Yeah.
are an influence too. If I write a space opera, I love those books. So yeah, all kinds of good stuff there.
Redwall and Mass Effect is like you're speaking to my heart.
Right? I'm speaking
Oh,
your language.
yeah. That's
It's
amazing.
fantastic.
Garrus is my boy. I don't know who your favorite Mass Effect character is.
Garrus is actually my husband. So we can all hang out together. It'll be fine.
All right, fine. But
Paragon
you
or
also
Renegade? The important questions. I know.
Shit. You know, I was always kind of like a middle ground kind of player, to be honest.
You can do that in 3, but in 2, if you play middle
Yeah.
ground, it fucks you over.
Yeah.
Which
So
is
it's
silly,
like in Mass Effect 2, I was Paragon because it's like I just liked my team, you know?
Yeah. It's easier to get everyone. The only time I've ever had my whole team survive and gotten everyone loyal
Was Paragon.
was when I went Paragon, because it's
Yeah.
easier to choose. There's just some of the Renegade choices I can't
Are so fun.
I can't do it. Well, some of them are fun, right? Some of
Yeah.
them are like, you know,
And others are brutal.
and
Yeah.
others are like, oh my God, who could, I know they're just pixels on a screen, but like, I can't do that. Like, leave this poor, you know, Batarian to die in the gutter. Like, ooh, I know.
And then it's like you go back to the Normandy and you feel like everyone's kind of judging you.
Yes, as they should, though.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, you fucking murderer. Get out of here.
Right?
How are
Legit,
you our
though.
captain?
Exactly.
I also love that you named your dog Rex.
I did. Yeah. Rex with the W. Very few people get that reference, but it's kind of nice because his name just sounds like it's Rex. So it's like, oh, it's just a boring dog name. Okay. But then the few
That's
people
true.
that get it are like,
Yeah.
they get it.
Because it like straight up is a dog name. You
Yeah.
know? But then you just have the W and it's like, no, it's a Mass Effect reference.
Right? It's a Mass Effect name. And plus it's fun because then I can call him not Rex when he's in trouble.
Oh.
Even though it doesn't make sense. He would actually be what? Kuhn Rex, right? Because he's in Clan Kuhn, but whatever.
I like the name. I like the sound of Clan Kuhn.
Clan Kuhn, yes, exactly. Makes this sound much fancier than we are.
Yeah. Like a bunch of raccoons just hanging out together.
Okay, that sounds less fancy if we put it that way.
Fucking bunch of dumpster divers.
Right? You know what? We do what we have to do, Adrian.
Yeah. We got to survive, man.
It's true.
So touching on Among Thieves again, you brought up earlier about The Lies of Locke Lamora, and I love that series too. Shout out to Scott Lynch. It's unfinished, but it's one of those series where I'm like, I'm not bothered that it's not finished yet, you know?
Yeah. I feel like I've been satisfied with the ending of each book to the point that I'm like, I'm okay. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like so impressed on my mind where I'm like, I don't need to read it again.
Yeah.
Like, whenever Rothfuss comes out with The Doors of Stone, I'm like, I got to read those books again because I missed so much stuff. Yeah. But for Among Thieves, what were some of the things that went into like the process of actually writing that? You know, like how did the idea form and how did the characters take shape and the world and everything like that?
Yeah, the idea formed. It's kind of hard for me to say because I started outlining or brainstorming for this project. Gosh, it was in like 2015 or 2016. So it's been like a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And like Among Thieves actually didn't start out as Among Thieves. I started writing a different book because, okay, you know, the whole plotter pantser debate. Are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? Do you plan your novels out? Do you just discover them as you go?
Can I just be like middle? Can I just be like middle ground? I don't want to be Paragon or Renegade, you know?
Right, exactly. It's a plantser. I've actually heard people say that.
Plantser.
I've heard it said. But yeah, I'd always been a plotter and I was like, I'm going to try pantsing a novel. Like I'm going to do this because I've heard it's so good. And like, I was feeling stuck at the time. And you know, it's not my process. It did not work. I ended up with, I don't know how the people that do pants do it. They are wizards. Because I ended up with like 50,000 words of just like nonsense that went nowhere. But that nonsense that went nowhere had the magic system and the world of Among Thieves. So that was kind of where it started on one side. And then on the other side, I knew what wasn't working about that project was I was focused very much on like the upper echelons of society and like the people that were in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And I just really like writing thieves and rogues and kind of grittier characters. I felt like the world was screaming for something a little more fun because the
Mm-hmm.
magic system is so fucked up in this world that like I needed to balance that with some humor, right? With some levity. And I felt like setting a story of thieves and rogues would be better for that. And then I'd always wanted to write a heist. So I was like, perfect. Like, let's just bring all of this together. I'm going to make it a heist story. And for those that haven't read Among Thieves, like the kind of, I don't know, twist on a heist that it is, it's not so much like your Lies of Lochlamora or your Ocean's 11, right? Or whatever, where the whole team is actually working together towards their goal. In Among Thieves, every single member of our heist team is planning to fuck over everybody else. So once I had, that was going to do a heist and set it in this world, and that I have no faith in humanity. So all my characters are going to just be terrible people. Yeah, that was how I got started with the project.
This book is a lot of fun, regardless of like the
They're
nihilism.
terrible people. They're very
projecting.
fun. They're very fun.
Yeah. It's like, just kind of like gravitating towards people who are so not necessarily like shitty. Some of them are shitty, straight up. But this kind of person who's like so corrupt and like twisted by the world that they're in, that they're like almost like more likable or relatable in a way. Cause you're like, I know for you, it's like, yeah, you're not like that in real life at all. But then
I hope
it's
not.
kind of, it's, the show's going down the drain already.
Right.
But it's like being able to project yourself onto characters that have like really likable qualities, but are also kind of surrounded by terrible environs that influence them in ways where it's like, yeah, they gotta screw each other over and they gotta manipulate each other because of the realities of their circumstances. And for me, that was really like the crux of this novel, was like characters who you could attach yourself to and kind of like root for one character, even though it's just like, oh, you're fucking over this other character that I really like too. And it's just like, oh man, it's just this mess. Like it's like a beautiful disaster, and you're just kind of like watching it implode.
I love it when that's what I was hoping for, right? When I was planning it out, is that I wanted it to be not just everyone's betraying each other, though that was very fun and twisty to write, but just that they're betraying each other because they all have really good reasons for doing what they're doing. No one is just doing it for the lulz, right? Like everyone on the team is like really like between a rock and a hard place. Like it, for every single member of the team, it feels like either I get the loot from this job or it's all over for me, basically, right? In one way or another. And so I was really hoping for, because it's written in multi-perspective, right? So you jump from character head to character head as the chapters go. And I was really hoping for readers to spend a chapter in, Ivan's head or Nash's head and really go, I'm really like rooting for this character. And then jump to, Raya's head and realize, oh, I want her to win. But if she wins, then Ivan can't win. And I wanted that to be kind of conflicting for readers. So.
Yeah. And from your perspective, like, how was it in terms of, because I was talking to Charles and Dylan from Friends Talking Fantasy podcast recently. And your book came up as one of Dylan's picks for favorites of 2022. And one of the things that we were discussing was like this thing that's, happens in a lot of books, but sometimes it's not perfectly executed by some authors, where it's like you have multiple POVs and you have, different characters in different chapters, or sometimes they even do it where it's like head hopping within a single chapter, which obviously can get confusing for some readers. But from your perspective, how was it in terms of capturing the voice of the different characters in their respective POV chapters? Because that was something that I loved about the book, was like, you sound like you and you sound very different and that sounds like you. And it was kind of like an additional layer of sort of like genuine um genuine approach to each character, that it's just like, yeah, each of you sounds like you come from a different echelon of society, or you come from a different background, or, you know, your personality comes out a lot. Like, Rhea is like super brash and just like, I have hatchets. Like, what you gonna do about it? You know?
Right?
So,
Try to
yeah,
stop me. Yeah.
try to stop
I
me, man.
I had a lot of fun separating the character voices. It is tricky, and that was probably the part that took the most editing to get hopefully right.
Yeah.
um so my trick for all, and I do this for dialogue too, but it also worked really well for like just the voice in the like prose
Hmm.
sections too, is I read all of my books out loud to myself. At some point in the process, usually multiple points in the process, just to make sure, for dialogue, to make sure it sounds like something a human would just say.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times it looks fine on paper, but then you actually read it and you're like, oh no, nobody talks like that. No one's gonna say that. No, and you don't necessarily know that unless you say it.
Yeah.
But for also for that, I when I did during the reading process is I just picked a different like accent for each character. As and I don't do accents well. I will not pretend to do accents well. But it's just a way to like, if you give the voice a slightly different inflection as I was reading each chapter in their
Hmm.
voice. I don't know. For me, it was just like a brain trick to help me associate each character as a completely different entity, and give them their own full identity. If you'd like to hear much better accents for each of the characters, check out the audiobook, because Zoe Mills did a much better job than I could
MJ
ever
didn't do it. Don't
dream.
worry about
I
it.
did not. Yeah, no, I promise you I did not. You would not want to hear that. But no, my audiobook narrator did a great job with accents for all the characters. Um, but yeah, and I think it's just like about finding the different little verbal tics that they have. So like, you know,
Hmm.
Evelyn is from a different part of Kerouac from the whole rest of the crew. So she has some slang that you don't see in any of the other characters.
Hmm.
Just because she didn't grow up where they grew up, she has different you know, speech patterns. And you know, for Ivan, obviously the whole book is actually written in English, but they are speaking Tamori Common, which is a fake language that is
Hmm.
English. But Tamori Common is not Ivan's first language. He
Hmm.
is not a native speaker. So I tried to give him some, you know, turns of phrase that were maybe a bit more formal sounding, maybe a bit more, you know, like someone who has learned this language rather than just been born into it.
Yeah.
So just like little attentions to detail like that, I'm hoping make it feel more genuine, that it's different people talking and thinking when you're reading each chapter.
Yeah. You did a good job about it. Yeah.
Thanks.
And then how did you build that out then into a duology? So it's like Among Thieves and Thick as Thieves are the Thieves duology. So how did you know when you wrote Among Thieves that it's like, I want to, or like I'm planning to write this next book? And how did you approach that?
Yeah, so Among Thieves was always meant to be the first book in a two-book series. It was meant to be a duology from like the moment I outlined Among Thieves. Um, so it's been funny because Thick as Thieves has actually been written since like a year before Among Thieves even came out. So it's so funny. I mean, I feel like I had like an unfair advantage when I talked to other folks that, you know, released a debut book and then are talking about the stress and like the anguish of trying to write their sophomore novel with the pressure of having written the first. And not that there wasn't pressure. And like during the editing process, I've had a lot of moments of like, oh God, what if everyone hates it and I disappoint everyone? And you know, it is
Yeah.
still scary. But I do feel like I got to skip a lot of that because like it was just already written. Like,
Hmm.
it was already done. You know, the battle for me was getting it picked up, and you know,
Hmm.
proving to my publishing house that enough people had been interested in book one to warrant a book two. So I would get to tell the rest of the story. So yeah, building it out into a second book was super easy because it was my plan from day one.
It's like, whatever, man.
I know
Yeah.
it was like a, you know, again, unfair advantage, right? Where it was like, you know, I got lucky with how that panned out. So
Yeah. And what's your writing process like these days now that you've got these two books done? Next one's coming out in July. Um, you know, how are you feeling about like your writing process now, and your approach to, plot and characters and world building with the practice that you've had with these novels and the novels you wrote before that? Because I know you wrote more.
Yes, I wrote many novels. I've written many novels. Um, I feel like I have a solid process. I always feel like it's solid, and then I start a new project and realize that I don't know, my brain is broken since last time, or just like, the neurons now fire in a different way.
Yeah.
And that same process, I have yet to have the same exact process work perfectly for more than one book. Um, I will say the smoothest I ever had a process go was with Among Thieves. From the like conception of the idea to the outline to the draft, was very smooth. Every book since then and before then has been like a little different, in some way or another. And a few have gone smoother than others, but I do feel like I am a plotter, and I know that about myself now. So,
Hmm.
regardless of how I do my process, I did try pantsing again for Nano last fall. So, not this fall, but fall 2021.
Yeah.
I tried again. Nope. Still not my process. Still got 50,000 words of unusable garbage.
Yeah.
So it's great. But who knows? Maybe that world will show up in something else down the line. Um, but yeah, I do a lot of research and building out beforehand. I love OneNote is what I use.
Mm.
So I'll take and I'll make different folders and subfolders for the world and all the different kingdoms, or factions, or whatever it is in the project I'm working on, and then different folders for each character, and then folders for each act of the plot, where I can put just random word vomit notes. I can put inspiration images. I can put like I do character interviews for all my characters, so
Hmm.
I'll ask them 20 questions or whatever, and answer those questions in the character's voice to kind of A, learn the things I need to learn about them, but B, figure out how they talk, how they tick, how they kind of navigate the world and social situations, which is really helpful. But yeah, and then my plotting is all in Excel or Google Sheets. I do it, yeah, in a spreadsheet format because I'm type A as fuck. And it's helpful for me to see it in a grid format,
Yeah.
where I
Yeah.
can split it into columns for every subplot and character arc, and then rows for every scene, and then I can just kind of see how the story is taking shape before it's a messy pile of words in a document. You know what I
Mm.
mean? It's easier to pull the thread and change the order of things, or cut a character, or add a character, or whatever,
Yeah.
and see the whole big picture. Um, for me in a grid format. And I know that there's a lot of author friends I know that would vomit at the idea of having to plot in Excel. So it's not for everyone. But yeah, it's like a new process of discovering new parts of a process every single book. So
Yeah. And it's kind of like by the sounds of it, the way that you approach it is you have a template, and obviously whenever anything has a template, that template is not perfectly applicable to the thing that you want to do. You have to kind of like manipulate
yes.
it a little bit and see what kinds of tweaks you need to make in order for that thing to work. But I love that you have like, it's like I got my programs and like I got that shit, and it's like Excel. If anyone wants to hear more about Excel, go listen to episode 30 on heists and capers,
Yes.
where MJ and Leslie Penelope. I think Robert Jackson Bennett also said he
Yes. There
uses
were
spread.
several of us on Team
Yeah,
Excel that
and then
episode.
Jonathan Navarre. I recently
Was like,
spoke with
what is
him.
wrong
Yeah,
with you guys?
exactly.
Yeah. Whoops.
Yeah,
Sorry, Jonathan.
it's okay, buddy. We love you, man. It's all
Right?
good. Um, but other than being my new co-host, what does the future hold for you?
That is a great question, and I don't yet know the answer. Hopefully, a lot more books. So I have 3 more books completely fully written, not counting Thick as Thieves right now.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm not under contract for any of them, which is a scary place to be because it means I
Hmm.
don't know what my publishing career looks like after Thick as Thieves comes out.
Yeah.
But kind of a fun place to be as well because I have some options, whether it is, continuing on with the traditional publishing path or maybe dipping my toes and trying self-publishing down the line, if I can figure it all out. It's a lot to figure out. But yeah, more books in some capacity for sure. And I hope that I get the chance to share the stories.
Yeah. And we got you back no matter what happens, so don't worry.
Thanks, friend.
Yeah. But also, it's like we got episodes on self-publishing and all that stuff if you feel like learning a bit more. But it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
I think it's kind of cool. We're in this place where it's like a lot of authors are doing hybrid, where they have some traditionally published stuff, some self-published stuff. So it's like, there's never been a better time to be an author because there's so much flexibility in the ways that you can approach your
Yeah, a lot
career.
of options, and I'm big time on team whatever is best for you and best for your book and best for, your soul and what you want to do is,
Yeah.
the approach you should take, So, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, to close out, I would like to ask you if you could give listeners and viewers a good nugget of soundbite writing advice, and B, to tell me a weird or random fact that you find to be utterly fascinating.
All right, so my writing advice is kind of related to what we were just talking about, where it's basically don't trust anyone that gives writing advice. Like, not really, but anyone that gives dogmatic writing advice, right? Like, if someone says you need to write your book this way, you got to write every day. Don't listen to them. There is no one right way to write, publish, or market your book. As long as you are putting in the work, creating something that you are proud of and that is your best self in the story,
Mhm.
telling a story that you're the best person to tell that story, and sharing it in a way that you find meaningful, you're doing it right.
I love that.
Crushing it. Yeah. Oh, and a weird random fact. Okay. So it's not that fascinating, I guess, but um I learned this actually just the other day and I found it fascinating because I'm a grammar nerd. Do you know why an M dash is called an M dash?
Isn't it like EM dash?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah. It's in the name. It's because it is on a typewriter, it is the same width as the letter M.
Really?
So yeah. And also another fun fact about the M dash, it is the best piece of punctuation. I don't have a source for that last part.
I
That
agree
may
with
be
you there, though.
opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. That is subjective, not objective, but whatever.
Right? I mean, it's objective. I think it's objective.
I love how your random fact was actually so applicable to writing. It's perfect.
Thank you. I try to keep it on theme,
I feel like down the line we're getting at some weird shit, but I'm really excited for that too.
I am very excited for some weird shit that we hear. I love random facts, so yeah.
All right, well, MJ, thank you so much for chatting with me today, and I'm so thrilled to have you on board as my co-host for this adventure, as well for anyone who contributes to our Patreon at $10 or more a month. MJ will be doing an exclusive reading of Chapter 1 from her upcoming book, Thick as Thieves, which is out on July 25th, so look out for that. And MJ, where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, people can find me across all social media channels pretty much. So Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, as long as it survives. I am at MJ Kuhn Books, all one word.
Awesome. And you can also follow SFF Addicts on Instagram and Twitter at sffaddictspod, or you can follow me in those same places at Adrian M. Gibson. So that's it for this episode. Stay tuned for next week for part 2 to hear our mini masterclass with MJ on being a debut author. So we're going to elaborate on a lot of the things that we were talking about today, and I'm really excited for that. But for now, keep reading, keep imagining, and we'll see you next time on SFF Addicts.